Okay, we are live. Hi, everybody that's already here. Early birds, I love it. So welcome to our webinar. I might be a little subjective, but I think you've made an excellent life choice by choosing to spend your time with us here today. I'm going to kick off this session, or Puff is going to run this session. You're not stuck with me this whole time, I promise, but I'll kick off 3 minutes past just to give people time to filter in, get comfy, grab a drink, or just enjoy me awkwardly chatting at you guys as you're getting ready to hear the real experts and people talk. I'm Crystal. I work at Three-Sided Cube, and yeah, I'm your opening act before the real juice. I don't have any opening act stuff to share with you though. So yes, I love that you guys are all getting straight into it and telling us where you're coming from because I'm so nosy and I want to know. All right, got a lot of UK, some New York, all over the world. This is global. How awesome. Okay, I wanted to step this question up too because of the nature of this webinar, but what is your favorite AI tool of the moment? What are you using? What is the du jour method that you're implementing into your day? Or even what is a surprising use for AI that you've found lately? Could be at work or personal life. I use it to make my emails sound like Snoop Dogg. So this is a safe space. There is no judgment. People are still filtering in. What AI is everyone using? Come on. There we go. Deep research. I haven't used that model yet. Are other people using it? How are you finding it, Carol? Complexity, Claude. And this is just me asking because then I know what to go research and use. So thank you guys for helping me do my job. All right. So as people are filtering in, just a few housekeeping bits. I wanted to make sure to reiterate to keep in mind that there is not a one size fits all journey with AI adoption. It's kind of the point of today. So we want to have a real chat about what's worked, what's flopped, and not make it feel like we're trying to recruit you into some AI cult. There is literally no such thing as a dumb question. So everyone is on varying degrees of the adoption spectrum. So feel free to slap it in there and we will address it with the panel, or even I'm sure your fellow attendees will jump in and chat about it because this is all something that is changing constantly and we're all learning in real time. We will be sending out a follow-up, like one pager right after the event. So make sure you keep your eyes peeled for that. And then this is also available on demand. So if you have to dip, no worries. You can catch it whenever. You can share it with your network. Or if you're obsessed and you just want to watch it on loop, then you are welcome to do that whenever. All right, so my time is up and I'm not going to bug your ears anymore. Let me set the stage for our very own Puff, who's going to be our master of ceremonies. And
hi there, and welcome to the webinar. I'm Puff, sort of, your AI-generated host for the day. And some things humans still need to do. Sorry about that. Clearly she means well, but some things are better left to the real humans. So I'm Puff, I'm the real Puff, and I promise this session will have zero AI washing and zero robot overlords. Just honest, pure conversation about the real stuff. So what's working, what's tricky, how can AI support the brilliant products you're all building to do good? So I guess we need to get into it because that's what we're waiting to hear. We are joined by some incredible panelists here today. So we'll just do quick intros. So first one up is Jeff. You want to give us your name, the organization you're with, and tell us where in the world you are at right now.
Thank you, Puff. I'm Jeff Hampton. I'm on the East Coast. I'm the co-founder of Swagatar, who actually has been working with Three-Sided Cube lately, and it's been fantastic. So thank you. After leading teams on the PlayStation 5 and at Roadblocks, I chose to focus on developing the next generation of ethical engineering products and leadership.
Amazing, amazing. And next up, we have Nicole.
Everyone, my name is Nicole Levitz. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Senior Director of Digital Interventions and Insights at the Planned Parenthood Federation of America, which is our national office. I'm coming to you live from Chicago as I'm in the process of moving to New York and very excited to be with you all here today.
Amazing. And Ibrahim?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ibrahim Haddad. I am the head of information analysis and communication, two different profiles, information management and communication advocacy, etc. I'm working with the United Nations Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, UN OCHA in Yemen.
Amazing. And our final panelist, Nick.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Nick Suplina. I'm Senior Vice President for Law and Policy at Everytown for Gun Safety, coming to you from Brooklyn, New York.
Amazing. So that's me out there. My real name is Sophia, but everyone calls me Puff, and I'm one of the directors here at Three-Sided Cube. And our mission at Three-Sided Cube is to change millions of lives for the better. And we do that through designing and building what we call tech for good. So technology that has a positive impact. And we're here today to talk about how we embed AI into purpose-led tech. And these amazing panelists have been doing that. And they've been doing that fairly recently. So I know we're in very good company with you guys. We have a few questions to get through today. And the first question I'm going to start with is, where did your AI journey actually start? And what pushed you to explore it in the first place? And I'm just going to give a little bit of background here, because obviously here at Three-Sided Cube, we use AI and we use various tools. But we have to start with our people. And rather than people coming to us asking for AI into the products, it starts with our people. And we've been on a journey ourselves to really encourage and get the team behind these AI tools to work out what the benefits could be for obviously ourselves and for our clients. And I've got a feeling, Jeff, you know a thing or two about leading development teams and encouraging them to use the tools. So I'm going to start with you in terms of that first question.
Sure. I think my generative AI journey began probably with ChatGPT 3 and 3.5. And just before that, I had been working at Roadblocks to solve some interesting engineering challenges that affect the mobile application that 270 million players use on Roblox. And we had a problem. We needed to translate one kind of language to another kind of language. In this case, a programming language. And even that early version of ChatGPT was capable of quite a bit of magic. And its predecessors, also used in a hackathon, also capable of quite a bit of magic. So we ended up using some of that tooling and took a project that would take 18 months per upgrade down to 6 weeks. And that was an initial proof that there was a lot of value there from an engineering perspective. But the more I've worked with AI over the last few years, I really see a ton of benefit in aiding human connection and reducing toil. And I think that that's largely where we can scale the good and really focus on human connection.
Amazing. Did it really take 6 weeks?
There was a lot of engineering that went into it.
Right. Which is incredible. Nicole, how about you? Where did your journey start?
Building off of what Jeff shared about scale for the good, we really came to AI and machine learning in particular in 2019. We had a chat program with live educators for about 10 years at that point and could never meet the number of people that wanted to talk to us. And one of the things that we were interested in exploring was particularly engaging our youngest users on the beginning of their journey. As I'm sure many of you know, the chatbot scientific literature is long. And one of the things we know that bots do really, really well is deal with sensitive information. And we had a hypothesis that if we talked about sensitive topics for young people, like periods and masturbation, with a bot, what it would do. And ran a pilot with Watson, IBM, which we can talk about if people want to talk about it, back in 2019. And that was really the beginning of Planned Parenthood's AI journey.
What did you learn from that? I'm going to say experiment. What did you learn, Nicole?
No, I think experiment is right. I learned several lessons. I think one, there's no one platform that's going to do all the things we need it to, and that you're going to have to try other things. Two, you need an escalation path. One of the first things we did is make sure that that connection to those live humans was there for when the bot was confused or needed further assistance. And I think the other piece, though, is the beginnings of learning how to build product and how to build product with the people who we're building it for, right? And that was one of the first times that we did that slowly, properly. I'm not saying we're there yet today, but we're really working and shipping on that day by day, for sure. But that's a huge lesson from that work.
Amazing. And what about you, Ibrahim? Where did your journey start?
This for me, Ibrahim? Yes. Okay. Actually, AI journey started in 2015 when I used to work with the United Nations office in Gaza. There are a lot of data, humanitarian data, coming every day to that office. So I started to think how to benefit from this data. And I created some concept note about a small tool to be a one-stop shop for humanitarian data. So anyone need any information about that crisis, this tool, and it will be responded by the top-ranked websites to avoid having disinformation or misleading information, etc. And after that, it will be including also the social media, Twitter, Facebook, as one of the in the region for sharing information with community. So your AI, but how to benefit from the big data in a humanitarian crisis. This is the journey. But after that, we start to develop a lot of tools and a lot of ideas. And I will mention what we did recently in Yemen, which is a media review tool that we have a daily report to summarize what is the media outlet today, what is that hot topics in the media, either national or regional or international media. So we created a tool to summarize, categorize, interpret the data. So our AI and innovation came from the operational necessity. It is not a matter of innovation for innovation's sake. And why we start to use AI this period too much, and even if our Undersecretary General mentioned it many times that we don't use the AI just for the sake of technology, but it is because the humanitarian workload and demanded to be smarter and faster to support the decision makers.
And I think that's so very valid. And I would imagine that will be a common theme that we'll see throughout today, not using it for the sake of using it. And I'm going to come to you, Nick, because I feel like you guys have done some incredible things, and it's born out of genuine need rather than just doing it for the sake of doing it. So did you want to kind of talk about where your AI journey started, Nick?
Sure. Yeah. I had the chance in prior parts of my career to use what would have then been called machine learning and the like to try to advance public policy goals and in my line of work. But for Everytown, probably now about 2 years ago, we did start with the sort of question of what can this new powerful technology that's going to get better every day do? In applying that technology and in launching Everytown Labs, which is our sort of concerted effort to leverage AI for gun violence prevention, we really focused on problems in our field that we can't solve or couldn't solve, certainly with the resources we currently had. And so in addition to what I think I heard, creating similarly creating sort of chatbots that give you accurate information, that don't hallucinate, that tell you the real honest truth about gun violence in the United States and its solutions. We more recently just launched a program called Everyshot. It's at everyshot.org. You should check it out, which uses AI to synthesize tens of thousands of news articles on gun violence in the United States, pulls it, sorts it, makes it filterable among dozens of different categories, and gives you a real-time awareness of gun violence. And that wasn't just something that we did because we wanted to see if we could, although I was very interested to know if we could, but because even in the best of times, we have official data on gun violence lagging sometimes as much as 18 months, 2 years. And this is a public health crisis in the country, and you can't solve a public health crisis with information that's over a year old. I remember COVID. We'd get daily reports, and you'd be able to track in real time. How is the virus changing? How are the instances changing? Well, we can't bring that same level of understanding to gun violence with old data. So Everyshot seeks to solve for that using the best available information we have, which is news reporting, which is imperfect. And it just got more important because funding at CDC and other agencies that are in charge of both monitoring gun violence and reporting it to the public are being pretty drastically cut. And we don't know what the future holds for our ability to ever get access to that. So definitely AI for the mission, not for the sake of it, is I would say that's officially a theme of the day. And we've been, as we've been going through and trying to figure out what's our next project or how are we going to use it internally, we're always starting with the problem set and then seeing whether the AI tools we have are a good match.
Amazing. I've got two things. So I don't know if for those listening at home, if the sound is okay for you, I just want to be transparent in that for some of the panelists, I think we're getting a bit of feedback. So what I'm going to ask is, you amazing panelists, when you're not speaking, if you can put yourselves on mute, please, and then unmute yourself when you want to add something or when you want to answer a question. I think that might help. So hopefully that is helping if anyone is experiencing any feedback. And I guess the next question I'm going to come to is, I guess, really why people are here today. I can't go through any day now without hearing something about AI or a new tool that I should be using, or the fact that it's gonna solve all of my problems, which, spoiler, it's not. But for those listening that are wondering like where they can start or what they could possibly look to implement, like, what's a small, smart use of AI that you guys have seen work well? And I'm going to come to you, Ibrahim, first, and then we'll go around the room.
Yeah. So let me emphasize. I think I agree with Nick. I think we created similar tool that to monitor the news recently after the UN reform and a lot of UN funding issues globally. We start to lose the human resources. So we need to think outside the box how to continue our service and how to continue our mandate to advocate for the people in need in the country where there's a crisis. So when we came to the to build a media monitoring tool, because in Yemen we have a lot of disinformation against the UN, the humanitarian work, and also this it might impact or lead to a staff safety and security. So we started to monitor this media on daily basis, and it took 3 to 4 hours from 2 staff member to review, validate, and etc. So it is not about collecting all the media and bot, because we need only the humanitarian media. So we started to build our AI model to scan all the media, categorize, and translate. If it is in Arabic, we need to translate into English, and if it is in English or French, we need to translate to see also what is the hot topics that at that there. So this tool, it is not a flashy, but it is a game changer for coordination and timelines and data quality. So what we are doing now is more coordination. The staff can follow up on another tasks to enhance and to utilize their time. And this is part of our UN efficiency reform to be more efficient. So the next step for this is to also to listen to our social media, because the tool that we built is scalable and adaptable. We can scale it to listen to the social media and analyze the social media and the media and see the linkages between both of them.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And do you know what? That's in a similar vein to what you're doing, obviously, at with every shot. Is that fair, Nick? Would that have been your example, or have you got any other examples, Nick?
Well, I mean, Ibrahim's clearly more adept than me, because there's nothing simple about every shot to me. Like, it was something that becomes simple by comparison to how many humans you would need, which would probably be like 30 people full time to do what we have 2 people part-time, like doing quality control and improvements on. I mean, I think that but yes, it probably would be the best use that we've come up with so far. But we do have a lot of, I think the folks listening probably know this, but like, it is like generative AI is great for synthesizing large and disparate volumes of information. And we happen to sit on a lot of that. And so whether it's social science libraries that we have, or databases of gun laws or historical gun violence data, being able to put that into a sort of discrete instance of a chatbot and ask questions against it, or is something we're experimenting with. And again, that could be a real just game changer internally for how long it takes to do something like just like kind of research on, say, what laws may have had the most impact over time, right? This would have been a PhD student, working for years on a particular law. And now, in an instance that we're experimenting with right now, Claude is writing the code to find whether there's statistical significance in queries that it's like really remarkable. And I will just say, just in case, I hope I sound fancy and technical, I'm a lawyer. This is not my field, but by just being in these products and using them myself and playing around in commercially available instances, as well as the ones we're trying to build, you really start to see what's capable. And you start to see, like, as I think Ibrahim was saying, like kind of the things that would take tons of time for somebody to do, that they can now do very, very quickly and get great outcomes and get onto the other work that needs to be done that only they can do.
So true. Nick, don't play down your technical knowledge. You do sound very technical. It's great.
Well, that's my goal today.
Jeff, what about you?
Oh my goodness. I use ChatGPT because I don't have a lawyer. So I'll give you a call later. I read a fascinating article because they show up in our inbox now. And it was talking about, from an engineering perspective, kind of where the value is and where AI should fit. And it divided problems into the left side and the right side. I would encourage everyone to look at the left side, which is research, for instance. That's a great one. Finding a way to call large data sets. In our case, we wanted to know, for every conversation that was happening, for instance, with a student, what are the themes? What was the sentiment? Doing that and having a manual review now takes minutes instead of hours. So those things that were typically very nuanced, we can remove a lot of the toil there. But as you shift from, kind of the left side of creativity and thinking about the right side being deterministic, things like programming, formulas in an Excel spreadsheet, these are things that are like typically computing activities. Those should be table stakes. So as you're going through your day, find a place where you stub your toe and you say, I just don't want to do this again, whatever that thing is. Apply it there and build your confidence. I think the most interesting thing that I've done recently is I took, and it's okay, he knows that I do this. I took one of my discussions that I was having with one of my clients and modeled him for a moment and then had a chat conversation. Because there were some things that I needed to work through. I'm very focused on mentorship and kind of, emotional intelligence and understanding where I can be better in those conversations. That's a far left activity that is very much a humane, creative, introspective activity. There is a place for AI there too, if you want to explore that kind of space where you're saying, I'm going to model everyone on this panel and practice for 15 minutes. I didn't do that this time because I met you all and it's fine. But I would encourage you to think about interesting ways to level up your own creativity or work through a problem and do that, in a safe space, essentially, with privacy.
I absolutely love the analogy of, where you stub your toe, like take that problem, take that challenge, and then try and model that. That's a really lovely takeaway for anyone listening today. What about you, Nicole?
I think adding on to building your own product is not a simple thing. And I'm also not a techie by training, but I'm learning my way slowly but surely. It's about finding simpler instances to use these behemoth tools that make sense, right? Like we have done incredible work, and I feel silly calling it out, but our user experience research team has started building out a GPT for themes, like big themes like abortion access, and are jumping in all these interviews so anybody can go in and have that personalized, simplified experience instead of reading through white papers and details, and being able to use that as a tool for dissemination has been absolutely essential. And the work that goes behind that to create the data, having an instance that is safe to do that, those are not simple things, but the act of actually building it and then sharing it becomes really simple, which has been incredibly powerful for our team. And we've done that in a few ways. We took all of our chat content from the bot and live and put it into a GPT so folks can get a first draft of content and then iterate from there. That has not gotten as much use as I probably would have liked, but part of the reason we do this is to try, right? And the UXR or user experience research bots have been getting huge play inside and outside of the digital teams, which is the other piece that is an enormous challenge for us to get other folks who not only don't identify as technical people, but they're afraid to leverage these technologies. And making it as simple as possible and as familiar as possible becomes a way to help bring other people on your team along. That has been really powerful for us.
Something that we have definitely noticed, and I'm saying this in confidence with you all today, but it was really interesting when we started our outreach for the panel to get people to talk about AI or their journey. We got so many no's because people were nervous to share, or they didn't feel like they were technical enough to be able to talk around like their experience. But interestingly, they had done some incredible things and some incredible case studies, but people were just really nervous to talk about it in public. And I don't know if and it's interesting hearing like some of you say, well, I'm not technical. I'm not. But actually, you all do on the panel have great experience with AI. But as humans, we're all very nervous to talk about this technology. And that has really thrown us here at Three-Sided Cube. And this is, I guess, part of the reason we wanted to have this session today is to try and not normalize, but humanize this and talk about some of the challenges and, potential solutions for this stuff. Because I think there's this whole thing where it can seem way more complicated than it actually needs to be. I'm not saying some of this stuff isn't hard. Like, I know it's hard and some of the challenges are very technically complicated, but we can still talk about these as humans, and we're not all experts. We are all learning. So that was a real insightful piece from us when we were trying to get people to talk. Before we kind of come on to some juicier bits, I'm interested in like how you've ensured your AI use aligns with your personal and I guess organizational values, mission, or users. How have you ensured alignment? And I'm going to come to you, Nick. You were the first one to start nodding. So
I'm a nodder. But I integrate, and just to react to your last comment and take that question. I am very much a believer in the adage that technology is neither good nor bad, nor is it neutral. And I think like centering that is a good place to start in your thinking about AI, because those that are out there selling it as the panacea to everything are out to sell something. Those that are warning us of the coming doom might have a point and we should listen. But the fact is that this is a technology that is here. And there are certain instances and use cases of this that are just undeniably good. Under-resourced nonprofits doing mission-driven work that they can't quite do otherwise. Like that's like the uncontroversial part of it. And we can live in that uncontroversial space while also wrestling with the much bigger, much harder macro issues in the field. And I don't think you're like putting your thumb on the scale one way or the other when you do so. At least that's where I'm at. We, of course, have our own sort of mission and moral and ethical constraints. And when we were building the chatbot, for instance, it really came to the fore, right? Our touchstone for everything we do is accuracy. I mentioned I'm a lawyer and I oversee a research team as well, and accuracy is everything. So we needed one of the reasons for the chatbot was to get accurate information. And so making sure you've got a good knowledge base that is all vetted information, and it was really important. There was a certain amount of like humility we needed to build into our chatbot. Like chatbots love to pretend that it knows a thing. And we were like, there are some questions that you're not very good at answering, so please don't try to answer them. Like, it's okay to say, like, I'm sorry, I can't answer that. And we might disappoint our user a little bit, but we're here to get it right. And then relatedly, the kind of ethics, of the chatbot were really important to us. We had to build in guardrails. We wanted a chatbot, for instance, that like could be a really great resource to a school administrator about how to prevent shootings and guns coming into the school. We don't want it to be a tool for the next school shooter, right? And like informationally, these are like quite related topics that we needed to make sure our chatbot could thread that needle. And we're not going to let anything go out into the world until we were like quite confident that it could do that. And so I think from the beginning, understanding, again, what your values are, what the goal is in the work is very centering, and I think was very helpful, so that you're not just like building something off, over here and then realizing, oh, the unintended consequences. Like, well, at this point, I think we've talked too long about unintended consequences for them to truly be hard to predict. And so that was really key in building all of our products.
Amazing. And what about you, Nicole?
You could see my face. I want to double click on half of the things that Nick just said, and I'm so heartened and validated for some of the structural pieces that he lifted. And one is this high confidence threshold for the bot. Rue, our sex ed chatbot, will not answer a question unless they are 90% confident in the answer. And in comparison, a ChatGPT is maybe at a 60%. And we have to hold ourselves accountable to that accuracy. In addition, as I'm sure other folks' tools do this. We need to have that tailored experience of our brand, which is trauma informed. It is tailored to instill trust and empathy and expertise and accessibility and all this good stuff baked into our content in a way that shows up in everything that we do across the organization, and making sure that that is part and parcel to the work that we do. And, but it's complicated, and it does leave that user experience not to be ideal, right? People are used to getting an answer every time they type something into a conversational bot. And when you don't get that, it's like, is this wrong? Am I doing something wrong? And that dance becomes really complicated for us, but is an enormous piece of the ethics work. I think the other part that we're really starting to do on the sort of opposite side is how we show up and how we make sure that users who are not coming to us because they are going to ChatGPT with their questions and not migrating to our website or whomever's website are actually getting that accurate information. And how do we begin to move the conversation with these enormous companies to make sure that when folks are asking these questions, they are getting the answers they need? Because that is now part of our mission work, which was not there before and has very little, if any, playbook at this point.
I really loved the numbers around the accuracy. I just think that is amazing and probably good for anyone listening in terms of, if you have a bot that you're training, maybe taking those guidelines, benchmarks, whatever you want to call them, is a really good takeaway. I could see you nodding, Jeff, quite a lot through that. What are your thoughts?
First of all, I want to stay a little bit in my lane, right? Our use cases have varied in size, and I do come from a technical background, and I will say, y'all sound highly technical. So just, go ahead and wear it. I'm gonna step on the legal toes for a second. The way that I have approached this is a combination of people, process, and technology. And in the engagements that I've had recently, at least, I wanted to start from a place of understanding and aligning some of the people and the security and what does accuracy mean and how are we going to test? Because I think about this from more of an engineering standpoint, and ended up creating a space program, right? Security, privacy, accessibility, AI, safety, compliance, and education, where everyone in the org has a playbook that's just very simple, similar to things that engineers would know, like ITIL, or, hey, look, we need PCI compliance and HIPAA compliance. Therefore, you need to do ABC. I took that and kind of boiled it down first, even for the small team, just so that there's a sense of, are we aligned around what it's going to mean to protect privacy for people who are not adults? Do we have an understanding about what we share and what we don't share? When does the bot stop, right? Or when does a response stop? And then backed it up with tooling. So yes, we do post-facto kind of analysis, but real time, every response is flowing through a system that is guardrailed and is watching out for certain things. And I think that's also table stakes at this point, but I'm seeing a lot less than I would like to see in the industry in terms of support and observability when we have people who are in potentially vulnerable positions who are relying on accurate information or emotional support. I have seen mentions of difficult topics around violence, potentially. And that's something that we need to understand legally, how we report these things. We need to have the team aligned around how we handle it and how we protect it. And real time, we need to make sure that we don't have a character AI moment, that we don't in any way provide an answer. And that accuracy also means emotional accuracy. And so if we don't have that emotional accuracy, we need to bake into the system that you stop. It's safer to stop in those moments.
Jeff, do you plan for all of the different scenarios? Because I imagine there's going to be scenarios that you just can't plan for, and there's going to be surprises.
One cannot plan for every scenario. What's really fascinating about the current generation of especially large language models are just how good they are at understanding what things are like other things, right? I've heard it referred to as like a genius PhD golden retriever on acid. Like it really knows how to communicate in like these concepts that are fairly close to one another. So if you guardrail against a concept of self-harm, I don't have to necessarily block everything, but now I can search for a list that I can kind of completely whitelist or safe list or block list around to stop something. So there's a temperature and you can set your temperature of the garden.
Okay.
So if
Amazing.
something is moving toward an area, set that threshold low and throw an error and stop the conversation. Essentially hard stop the conversation.
Amazing. And it almost touches on, I'm going to break away from our questions. Ibrahim, I will get to you, I promise. But we've had a few questions come in from the audience. So I just kind of want to do a bit of a dive into those. So I've got 3 at the moment, but so the first one I'm going to say is from Kane. So how do orgs build confidence, to Nick's point? Confidence typically comes from repeatedly doing it, but that's hard to come in the public sector and the third sector because obviously it's resource constrained. Like, how do you build that confidence level and accuracy of AI generated results, which are very context specific? How can we learn more from each other? Like, any answers, any thoughts on that? I think this is just all around building confidence, but in the answers.
I think if I was going to start the next Uber, I better learn how to drive. I am a big proponent of finding use cases within the org right now, finding like-minded individuals. If you've got a team of 10 and 3 are scared of AI, take the other 7 and go just hack away for a week. Figure out for yourself in your use cases where the tools are good, where they are, and where they are dangerous. So I wouldn't expect that a furniture company doesn't know how to use a saw. And if you're going to go and start to evaluate how to accelerate or improve quality or scale impact, find those ways to test the limits. And guess what? You can also use them to go out and do the deep research and find every horror story so that you can make new mistakes. I'm a big proponent of making new mistakes. So try it, figure out what has already not worked. I like the question of how we can learn from each other more. I think we're doing this, right? And I think there should be more conversations in this space about how we're learning and sharing that with each other.
Right. And I think this question might be from Peter from Arise. That's an assumption there. Peter, I think it's you. And it's very specific, but Peter's saying that he comes across errors when he's trying to research specific topics. He doesn't call them hallucinations, he's calling them errors. I don't know what's right or wrong in terms of that term. But he's been researching disaster risk profiles of different countries and cities in the US. Okay. But despite carefully specifying the state in the prompt or question, as he calls it, the AIs repeatedly come up with the wrong town. Nick and Jeff are like, yeah, this happens a lot. Any advice or guiders or pointers that you could share today? Because I feel like this is going to be quite common, no matter what the subject, the prompts sometimes don't always work. Any advice?
I don't know if I would frame it as advice, but it's something that happens all the time. And then, like I promise, I will finish one point. But what we see constantly in our own bot, to Jeff's good point, use what you got, test where you need to. And if it is in that dangerous area, if that information is spitting out stuff that is beyond the scope, you might need to build your own thing, right? And you build your own tank of information and your own tool to spit that up. And then it becomes the chore of getting that in front of the people that need it in the moment they need it. But even that is complicated, right? We have the bane of the bot's existence is the difference between the abortion pill and the birth control pill. And no one's going to be like, you know what? I have a question about birth control pills and this is or I have a question about the abortion pill, right? Like there's like this pill in front of me, tell me. And it becomes, Jeff's point on like the likeness and the understanding of like this matches to this is great. But then when things are too similar, it can't decipher and it becomes really complicated to kind of build out the range of context clues that are around it. And we learn more and more every day. There are things that have patterns to it, but you have to be consciously looking at that and then building the back end to meet that context as well. And I'm sorry, Nick, for jumping. I apologize.
No, I completely agree. And I think that part of the solution set is right, like a little bit of build your own or make sure the data that's going in is like totally accurate. But I think that question also, it's a little bit about when LLMs run into structured data is I think it's certainly a problem that we've come across on Everyshot. And we've literally had the Count D and town problem, and our prompts are really excellent. And but so part of that, I think there's a lesson in there. I don't know if I have a solution for you, but the lesson in there I do think is that, and I think is generally applicable, is some of these tools are just so great at getting you 90 to 95% of the way there, but you're not going to get the final 5% without a lot of sweat and strained eyes and looking at the data and fixing it and trying to reprompt so that it doesn't happen again. And so you're not just, banging your head against the same wall over and over again, but still never without a human in the loop to sort of check. And I think one of the sub questions is like, but what if somebody doesn't know that this is the wrong county? And that is where, and Nicole's point, I think from earlier as well, it's like being an expert, and Jeff made a similar point, knowing your domain is like key to getting the confidence to doing the thing. If it's your tool or project or whatever. And again, right now, there isn't a simple substitute for that domain expertise, especially when you're checking to make sure that there aren't errors built into it. But I think keeping in mind, and look, I confess to being a lawyer. I thought that was very brave of me earlier. Like, I don't have a tolerance for risk. Like, I've been joined this profession for that reason. And accuracy means exactly accurate. Like, I'm not looking to be mostly right. But in this field, like, getting comfortable with disclosing 98% accuracy of a thing has been growth for me, but also being vigilant on that 2% is really important, because as Nicole was getting, that 2% can be like a really meaningful and sometimes, problematic error or whatever. And so that is why I think the human stays in the loop. That is why I think knowing your subject matter and still being the expert over the AI is really critical. And that final few percentage points is like where most of the work I think is going to happen here on out, because you can get so close to the end zone just through these amazing tools.
Agreed. I totally agree with that. I'm very conscious of time. We only have 11 more minutes, and I feel like we could spend hours talking about a lot of this stuff. The next question I have is, knowing what you know now with the projects and the products that you've worked on, what's one thing you'd do differently if you were starting this journey again? And Ibrahim, I'm going to come to you first.
Thank you, Buff. Just a few sentences about the confidence rate and the confidence and how to fix the AI for the previous question, if you allow me. Now, just if we need to understand how to build AI model, we need to understand that the AI is 30% real data and 70% a training data set just to train our model to get the correct answers. So sometimes we notice that from a ChatGPT 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.1. So the model itself enhance how to generate the results. So how to fix this? We need just to give the ChatGPT some of the corrected information or approved data set, and it will be fixed over the time. So this is what we call confidence rate. Now, back to your question, I think, Buff, you asked me about how to do things in a different way in the next time. And to be honest with you, we started developing this tool and the platform behind it in August 2024. And we repeated the design many times because we didn't involve the field and the end users. We do it from our technical point of view. So we do things, but we are not the domain experts. We are not the business owner. We are not the end users. So we presented it and they start to be reluctant to use it. And after that, one of them voluntarily supported us and she said, hey, if you need to enhance, you need to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And she gave us a lot of useful ideas to make this tool fancy and usable, to be honest. So I think that if we need to do more AI, we need to do more listening or do listening more to the end users, not only sitting on the laptop and start coding. No, we need to do more user elicitation over.
And I think, Ibrahim, it's a fairly common, I don't want to use the word mistake, but it almost is, like, not involving the end user is something that it happens more often than it should. And I don't I genuinely don't think you can create amazing products that people love without that insight, without that feedback, and without involving them in the design and the development process. And there's many different ways that you can do that, but it's crucial that you do that to get to a product that people genuinely love to use. What about you, Nicole? What would be like, would you do anything differently?
I mean, always. And I think that's part of the journey and part of why I actually do feel comfortable in some spaces saying I'm a technical person, but I'm not a developer. And that's what made me in this space. It is about iteration. I wish we had the ability with our funder to do small experiments and not just dive into a thing pretty quickly. That has been a real challenge for us. And, once we sort of saw a little bit of a light, doing that back and forth with the development ecosystem becomes complicated. And you really have to build a relationship to create the space to iterate differently. And we're grateful that we do have that in more places now, but I wish we could have done a little more on the front end with smaller experiments consistently.
I can see everyone's nodding to that. What about you, Nick?
Yeah, I think relatedly, so we definitely centered our sort of, like, as I mentioned at the top, sort of our mission and the stakeholders. And I think we did a good job, like in the chatbot, for instance, that we built, and really gaining sort of the use cases and building around those. But early on, as we were dipping our toe in, lacked internal capacity to really do that. And we did outsource a lot of the build. And I think, as sometimes that's just necessary. But even though we had centered all the right people and the right focus, the folks executing really didn't understand the data and the inputs. And as a result, it was kind of laborious. And then in the end, we had sort of an outcome that proved that we could do the thing, but wasn't the thing that we could bring to the public really at all. And so we learned a ton, and that is, to Nicole's point, like kind of part of the process. And that might have happened internally too. But my feeling is that bringing expertise in-house lets you iterate so much, like with such greater ease than like a retention with an outside developer is going to do a thing to a point, and then you're going to have to, I think, bringing that expertise in-house or developing it, because the thresholds for learning here are much lower than they have been in the past, is definitely my advice to folks just getting started. It's worth it because I think the continuity is really just priceless, and the ability to fail but not have it be like some major change in your contract, and just like keep fixing it and keep improving it is really the key to this.
Awesome. And what about you, Jeff? What would be one thing you would do differently? You're on
You know, I
mute.
was making the technical decisions. Am I still on mute?
All good. All good.
Okay. I was making the technical decisions and have for a long time. And I think that I would still echo iteration speed. First of all, working with a partner in this case was, like in the most recent project, was not the limiting factor. It was literally, we released 7 versions over the course of 4 months, I think. I would have liked to release 70. And I think having the right partner and really focusing early on how quickly can I get something meaningful in front of my stakeholders or in front of the people I'm serving, the students in our case, like how quickly can I get this new value out there and safely, which we established at the beginning, right? So as long as you have the right team, you have the right process and people aligned, I think then it's just a matter of continuing to focus on iteration speed. And that's where that accuracy can grow consistently. And then you can begin to automate the pieces that need to be automated, reduce that toil, and continue to make improvements. So I would echo iteration speed big time.
Wow. Okay, right. So I'm going to close it now. We've heard from each and every single one of you on, I think we managed to cover around 4 questions. We've had a couple of audience questions as well. There is one more point from Pia in the chat, and this is specifically to you, Nicole. She was wanting to know how you were diverting users from using ChatGPT to your tools, essentially. And my assumption is going to be there was a lot of marketing support behind that, but I could be wrong.
I don't think we are. And I apologize if I misspoke, but I am very curious how we show up differently in these tools, because we use significantly fewer people who are making their way through to our website. And I can't speak to other folks in other spaces, but that is very substantial for us. And I am fairly confident it is something that we're seeing across the nonprofit system and other systems as well.
Nick,
But it's SEO for now
yeah.
and other stuff.
Yeah, I would imagine. And Nick, are you finding this as well, or are people still finding your tools?
Well, they are, but I mean, our information in ChatGPT, like most of what ChatGPT knows about gun violence prevention is from our website. So, and I think the Google example now is particularly problematic, that folks might not make it to the page and they might not make it to the tool. I've heard folks talk about this as like the where of AI and not just the what, you know. And ideally, right, in a future state, Planned Parenthood's tool and Everytown's tool and stuff is like somehow like built into the place that people go generally for information. I think the benefit, certainly in Nicole's case, and I think in ours as well, is people know to come to us as experts in a place, and so they might be making it there anyway. And that might not be, you know, that's a lot of earned brand trust that isn't necessarily guaranteed in the future. But right now, I think keeps the traffic coming.
Amazing. Right. So thank you to each and every one of our amazing panelists for being so honest and so transparent. I really appreciate that because, hey, like there were a lot of people that were very nervous to speak publicly. So we really do appreciate you. And I know those watching at home, thank you to each and every one of you, for those watching right now and for those watching on demand. I hope we've covered some of the questions that you had. But if you do have any other questions, you can always reach out to us here at Three Sided Cube, puff@threesidedcube.com, or you can find us on LinkedIn, whether or not you're looking for Three Sided Cube or puff@threesidedcube.com. And I'm sure if you want to get in touch with our amazing panelists, we can try and make